Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Travel Tales by Siri. If this is your first time watching me, then a very warm welcome to you. If you're a returning viewer, then a very warm welcome to you too. In this episode, we're going to look at a 2-day trek with an overnight stay in a Chemo village in northern Laos, close to the town or the village of Nong Kiao. The video is slightly longer than usual, but that's mainly because I really wanted to put in as much of the experience as possible without over editing. Please watch to the end.
It was a 3-hour bus ride in a minivan from Luang Prabang to Nong Kiao. I didn't realize how popular it was, but it was absolutely packed to capacity. There's 2 buses, one at 8 or 8:30 in the morning, and then one at 10 or 10:30. I was told the one at 10:30 isn't as busy, but the first one in the morning is absolutely pumped. So, just as I was strolling around, I got talking with some other travelers, and they said that there were some caves not far from here, and they were right. So, about a kilometer and a half, maybe 2 kilometers, um, we found some caves. We tried to enter it, but it was really, really sort of like into the wild type thing. There was nobody there. There was a signboard that said there's a cave, but we couldn't really even find an entrance to the cave. And I didn't want to take a chance. So, and the others thought the same. So they tried. The other 2 guys tried, but even for them, it seemed like too much of a risk. So we came back, and that's also when I decided sometimes it's just better to go with a guide, and that's how I signed up for the 2-day trek with a guide and a group. So the next day, I woke up quite early in order to get ready for the trip. Before that, I immediately came out of the hotel room and just took in the beautiful views and the silence and just everything that moment had to offer before I started off to join the group. So there I am at the pickup point, and then the guide gives us a whole lot of instructions on what the 2 days was going to look like in more detail. He did tell us when he was selling us the ticket, but in more detail about it was basically a short tuk-tuk ride, and then 2 hours of trekking, lunch, a longer trek, overnight stay, and then the following day was another trek, and then getting to a waterfall and kayaking back to Nong Kiao. After the short tuk-tuk ride, we started off walking in the rice fields. One thing, it was about 8:30. Before 9 o'clock, it was already very, very hot, so I didn't have a good feeling. So when I started off, I was able to keep up with the group and I was walking with them and also got some help filming. So when you're traveling alone, sometimes filming is quite challenging, but because of the group, I got some help with the filming. Um, and yeah, it was okay for the first sort of half an hour or so. And then slowly, slowly, the heat really started getting to me. And not only the heat, it was also going uphill. For the most part, we were walking uphill. So the combination of the heat and the walking uphill was really, really challenging. One thing I have to share with you guys is I was the oldest in the group. Everyone there was younger than me by many, many years. So it was so hard for me to keep up. And yeah, that's me falling behind now. Everybody else has got more energy and I'm falling behind. And all that extra headgear that I had, the hat and the other cloth, honestly, that actually helped, especially that cloth underneath the hat. That really, really helped with sort of taking in the heat. And despite the heat, like close to 40 degrees, I didn't have a headache that day. And if you notice, I'm actually wearing my night shirt on top of my clothes, and that's just because I needed to cover my arms, A, from the heat, and also we were going into the jungle and I didn't have anything else um, that was comfortable and cotton. So I just had to improvise and use my night shirt again. So it served lots of purposes. And even though the views were actually beautiful, I don't think I could appreciate a lot of the views just because between the heat and the difficulty level, for me personally, it was just almost impossible to just take in the moment. And that's when I realized doing it at the right time, at the right temperature is just as important as like when you're making that decision. After about 2 hours, we finally reached. So around 10 o'clock or 10:30, we reached the Kimu village, and we had about 2 hours there. Hello, baby. Here's the village boss. Is here to greet us. He came out to us. So, if you noticed, we were underneath something. So, we were actually underneath the homes. So, these homes are built on stilts and with bamboo or wood, but then they've got like sometimes they're just wooden stilts, or these, I think this one was concrete structures. And oh my god, it was such great protection from the heat. And we got given some cold water and just, had time to walk around the village. It takes about 7 minutes to walk around the village, and then we had to wait for lunch as well. So after playing with the village children and watching them play with the other people in our group and another group that joined us, it was time for lunch. Lunch was rice, steamed rice, sticky rice, some kind of vegetable soup, and some other vegetable with egg. It was really, really tasty. It was simple, but it was really, really tasty. There was plenty of it, and it was all freshly prepared. So it's not like it was already prepared and waiting for us. They prepared it while we were waiting and, just sort of playing with the village kids. By the time we reached for lunch, I just wanted to sleep. I don't want to trek anymore. I don't want any more activity. I just wanted to sleep. And it wasn't just me that wanted to sleep, even though they didn't say it, but everybody was like just lying down. And then when we got called to wake up and get ready for the next part of the trek, everyone was like, oh, really? So we finally got ready. I got get up with my headgear, and the guide was suddenly feeling very enthusiastic and strong. I certainly wasn't. Then I had to do it. 3 hours. I was dreading it. Yeah, the guide's indicating that we're going in that direction, up that hill. It doesn't even look walkable, but that's where we're going. Guide reassures me that going uphill is safe but very hard. However, I had to ask that because I was only having running shoes. I didn't have like hiking shoes or anything. Early part of the trek, of course, was challenging, but was still doable. But it did take a lot of energy, and there was a lot of humidity as well, because now this was also going sort of into the jungle, like rainforest type terrain. So heat and humidity and uphill was really a deadly combination. So this is our first break here, and you can see everyone needed that break. And I think I needed it the most. It was so challenging, and occasionally there was a little bit of cool breeze that did help, but for the most part, it was very, very hard. So couldn't really film much more going uphill, and it was impossible to film going downhill, because downhill is far more dangerous, because you're actually coming down the mountain, but it's quite slippery, very narrow. So I think you get it. We couldn't film anymore. So now we're out of it. The worst is over. Now we're walking through the rice fields to the next village. The sun was still relentless. So that's another little rest break on one of those things to climb over. I don't know what they're called. The purpose of those things, however, is to prevent buffaloes from entering the rice paddies and eating up the rice. So these homes that you see here in the rice paddies, these are temporary homes that they use during the day. So they start early, about 6 or before 7 anyway, and then they work here up to 4:35 in the evening. So during the day, whenever they need to rest or they need to eat or whatever, they will do it in these temporary accommodations. It's school holidays now, so they even bring their children so that they can just be here. So I tried some sort of wild berry type thing. It was actually like a lychee, very much like a lychee, but less fleshy. I must have climbed at least a dozen of those. As I said, those are to prevent buffaloes from entering the rice paddies. The guide was just really, really, really supportive, I have to say. His name is Cop, and he was so patient, A, helping me with the filming, and also just keeping up pace with me because I was really slow, and I wouldn't have been able to do this without him. I would have liked to have kept the original voice, but the audio was really, really poor. Then during our last break before we got to the village, we just sort of had a slightly longer chat with my guide, and he was saying that he was a monk before, and that's where he first learned English. And there's no compulsion though in the Buddhist school for monks that you have to remain a monk for the rest of your life. You can leave whenever you want. So then he decided to quit being a monk. He received training to be a tour guide for 2 years, and he's now been a guide for 5 years, I believe. And so he's now married. He has 2 children, and he says his son is quite naughty, and that he keeps saying to him that if he doesn't stop, he's going to get sent to the monk school as well. He said he met his wife during the time that he was working in a restaurant. So when he was having his training to be a tour guide, he used to work in a restaurant. And when he used to go and buy vegetables for the restaurant, his wife used to work in the factory just opposite where the vegetables were being sold. And that's how they met. And they dated for 2 years. And then they got married at the age of 26. His wife's now moved to his village as per their tradition and culture, where the wife moves to the husband's home, and she no longer works at that factory, which is somewhere else, and instead in the local market she sells some food. So the guide also has 2 brothers, younger brothers, and they both work in Thailand. So it's very common for people in Laos to go and work in factories in Thailand. It's very easy for them in terms of language and culture because the language is like 99% same, and they earn twice as much, he was saying, and in addition to that, they also have boarding and lodging taken care of. So for them, it's the obvious choice. I asked the guide why he didn't go to Thailand, and he said because he's the eldest child and the eldest son in the family. He wanted to stay back and look after his parents.
It was really nice to get to know my guide a little bit better, just about their culture, their family life, just how people live in Laos. It was really, really nice, and all while resting a little bit and recovering from the very, very aggressive sun. After taking a look at sort of a closer look at the houses and see what those temporary houses look like, it was time for us to carry on.
Finally, I asked him whether it was common for Indians to do this type of trek because it was so challenging for me. And he said it's very uncommon. And in his 5 years as a tour guide, he's seen about 10. After taking a closer look at the wooden homes that we were sitting under, it was time to carry on. the final leg of this very long trek.
And there we are, almost reached the village, almost reaching. And honestly, when he said, "This is it," I was just the happiest person on earth. I was relieved. I was happy. I felt a great sense of accomplishment. Oh, it was a long day and it was a sight for sore eyes. So once I sat down, had a little bit of rest, it was time for me to choose between either staying with the guests or in the family home. They were exactly the same. Obviously, the guest rooms didn't have kitchen or toilet or anything. There was something they built outside for toilet facilities and a shower as well. Or I could stay with the family. Then they did warn me to say that if I chose to stay with the family, then I'd get woken up quite early because they start their day at 4:30 in the morning. So I chose to stay with the family because I wake up early anyway. And in the village, you will get woken up because the cocks crow at like 5 in the morning. So it was fine. So after settling down, having a drink and checking out my accommodation, I decided to stroll in the village. It was as remote can be. There was no Wi-Fi, no cell phone reception. Nobody really has a TV, or if they did, no one was watching it. And if you don't do a group excursion or you don't trek for 8 hours, the only other way to get there from Nong Kiao is by boat. There's no roads. So it was really, really interesting. And in terms of what they do in the evenings, once they return from work and reunited with their families, they just hang out with each other. Children playing with each other, adults either watching the very small children or, just preparing for dinner and talking to each other. There just seemed to be a great simplicity and great joy amongst the people. The one question I had in my mind is, do they have mental health problems? It was obvious to see that they would have physical hardships, but what about mental health? What are your thoughts on this? Please leave comments or share your thoughts. It would be really interesting to know. So after my solo stroll and some serious contemplation, I was done with that, and then I joined the group again. At this point, we were all sort of in the socializing area, just facing the Nam U River. So as we socialized, the mama of the house was busy preparing dinner for us. One thing I have to say is the dinner is super freshly prepared, every single thing from scratch. She was actually chopping up stuff, and there was nothing that was like pre-prepared or anything of that sort. Portions were absolutely generous, and the meal was well earned. Obviously, after 8 hours of extreme physical activity, everyone ate and everyone ate well. And then we all got a white thread that they tied around their hands, and as per their belief and their tradition, that thread is something they've prayed, or there's some kind of ceremony that it's been through, and if we wear it on our hands for 3 days, it'll bring us a lot of luck. Did it bring me any extreme luck? Not yet, but maybe it'll work later. Maybe it takes more than 3 days for some. I don't know. After I had dinner, I didn't even have the energy to stay on and socialize, because I think the rest of the group did. And honestly, I think when you live like that, where you work really hard, have a good meal, and then the sun is set, you don't even have time for unnecessary thoughts. You just go to bed. Simple. That was the beauty of it. Like, I didn't have time for a second thought. How fantastic is that? I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making this episode for you. And please comment, share your thoughts, like, share, and do subscribe. Subscription is really essential to keep us going forward and to continue to make beautiful content to share with you all. Thank you very much, and see you in the next episode.